Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing what your ex thinks after months apart. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing what your ex thinks after months apart. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will likely be going through a long journey. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 likely things that your ex thinks months after the breakup. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is this is different. So your ex-dumper is going to be going through a very different period of their life than they did during your relationship, just as you are, dumpees. Now, although this might sound somewhat obvious, let's break this down to understand exactly what this means, because different doesn't necessarily mean good. It doesn't necessarily mean happy, but different also doesn't necessarily mean bad. It doesn't necessarily mean sad. What it means is different. It's exactly what the word says. Some days your ex-dumper will be feeling more positive and happy. Some days your ex-dumper will be feeling sad and somewhat confused about their future. You see, when somebody ends a relationship, they are making a choice to go down a different path with their life, but they don't know exactly how things are going to be. They might have an idea, they might have a theory, they might have some thoughts in their mind of things they want to do, things that they couldn't do within the relationship with you, but they don't know how it is exactly going to be. They don't know exactly how they're going to feel on a random Wednesday when they're no longer with you after potentially being with you every Wednesday for years and years. This is a leap of faith, and although you probably don't want to hear about this from a perspective of a dumper thinking, yes, this is a leap of faith, I want to try and find my happiness, this is the reality that as dumpees we have to understand. They are taking a chance, they are taking a gamble, and sometimes it will feel like it was a good gamble, and other days it will feel like it wasn't. And this is where, as a dumpee, hopefully you can find some positivity, because your ex-dumper is not going to be living that brilliant, amazing life every single day. You as a dumpee might think they are. You as a dumpee might be viewing their social media and thinking that they are living their best life. And this is actually one of the reasons why I suggest, as a dumpee, you don't check your ex's socials, because at best it's going to confuse you, and at worst it's going to break your heart time and time again. Remember, whatever they post online is what they want people to see. It doesn't mean it's the truth. It is PR, it's public relations. This isn't the reality. This is just a brief moment in time that they have taken a lot of moments to consider, okay, what do I put on this? How do I want to convey this? Remember, if you see a photo where your ex looks incredible, they look so happy, remember they've probably had 30 photos and they've chosen one which looks great, and maybe they've even added some filters. Now, you can't believe everything you see online, so please don't check your ex's socials. The reality is, dumpees, that your ex didn't really know what the world was going to be like for them post-breakup. They've taken a chance because, sadly, they didn't feel enough romantic emotional attraction for you at the time of a breakup. That's why they took that decision. It's why they took the action. It's why they took the gamble, because they wanted to see if they could feel more happiness through a different journey, on a different path. That's why they've done this, but they don't know what's coming. And what they are most likely to be feeling is very different emotions, up and down. Good one day, not so good the next. Yes, they are likely to be experiencing new things, things which seem exciting and somewhat wonderful for a period of time, but even during this period of time, which I call the single honeymoon period, they're not going to be excited and living that best amazing life every single day. They might, for instance, meet their friends once a week now, where perhaps they didn't before. Maybe they go to the odd party, the odd nightclub, something like that now, but it doesn't mean they're doing it every single day. Most of the days of the week, they're living their life just as they did with you, but now alone. And that can't be very exciting. They're still probably going to work, they're still probably coming home, sitting around watching TV, but they're just doing it on their own now. So it's not that incredibly exciting period of time every single day. So dumpees, try not to think of your ex as living the perfect life all of the time, because they're not. Yes, they're going to be doing a few things differently, but it doesn't mean they're always happy. Some days they'll be happy, some days they won't. That's the reality for a dumper a few months post-breakup. So now let's get into point number 2 and my second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you have the new hype feature, please hype this video as well. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel to keep updated. And point number 2 is their dumpee to differing degrees. So today we're speaking about what your ex thinks of months after the breakup. What's your ex-dumper going to be thinking and considering? And point number 2 is you, their dumpee. If you're a dumpee listening to this, this is what they're going to be thinking a few months post-breakup. They're going to be thinking of you to differing degrees. But there is a very interesting dynamic to this where they think of you. Now, this might seem a bit counterintuitive, but please hear me out. So the more they see or hear of you, dumpees, a few months post-breakup, the less they will actually think of you. And the less that they see or hear of you, the more they will think of you. Now, that's why I say it might sound a bit counterintuitive, it might sound a bit of a paradox, but this is where we can really delve into what exactly is going on. If you remain in your ex-dumper's life, if you're chasing them, if you're texting, if you're calling, if you're bumping into them, deliberately or not deliberately, this is where your ex-dumpers, of course, they're going to be thinking of you in the moment where they see you, where they hear from you, where they gain information about you. Of course, in that moment, they are going to be thinking of you. But when you are not together, they're not going to be spending time wondering about you because they know everything. They're not going to be thinking about you, wondering about you, maybe missing you, when they know that every week you're going to text them. They know that every week you're going to bump into them. Why would they feel any longing for you? How could they miss you? You're always there. You're still in their orbit. Someone can only miss someone or something if that is no longer in their life. Your ex-dumper can't miss you if you're still in it. Now let's just look at the other angle. If you are not chasing your ex, if you're not bumping into them, if you don't see them anymore, if you implement my version of a no contact rule, then that would suggest that you are seeing your ex a lot less, if ever at all. You're certainly not communicating with them. And what does that mean? Well, it means they will think more about you. And that's the twist. They see less of you, they think more about you, because they're trying to fill in the blanks. If they haven't seen you, they can't say for certain what you're doing. They haven't spoke to you, they haven't seen you, they don't know exactly what you look like now. Have you changed in any way? They don't know. Their mind will fill in the blanks. They will start to think about you, they will start to wonder about you, and it can get to the stage of where your ex-dumper can start to miss you. Now, if we're talking a few days post-breakup, yes, there's going to be the shock of a breakup, but they're not likely to miss you to a degree of wanting to reconnect. Else why would they have ended the relationship? But we're speaking today about months post-breakup. Months is the key. Now, some of you listening may have been dumped a couple of months ago. Some of you may be listening who was dumped 11 months ago. Now, the longer it has been, the more likelihood there is that your ex-dumper will think of you if they haven't seen you. The longer they haven't seen you, the more they will likely think of you. There is that saying I'm sure you've heard of, distance makes my heart grow fonder. That is where people start to wonder, think, and miss something or someone that they haven't seen in such a long time. Now, of course, it doesn't go forevermore on this trajectory. I must say that I've seen a link where when people have been apart for more than a year, the chances of reconnecting do sadly start to decrease, but they don't disappear completely. I've known dumpers reach out to dumpees years post-breakup with no contact whatsoever. So this tells us it is possible, but your chance of success of reconnecting does decrease. That's the reality once we go beyond a year. But this today is where we're focusing on months rather than years. We're focusing on months rather than days or weeks. And this is a bit of a golden period. Whether or not you've been apart just a few months or whether it has been nearly a year, this is where you stand the most opportunity of reconnecting. From my research, dumpers are most likely to reach out to dumpees between the 6 to 12 month mark. That's the golden period. That is where, if you've implemented my version of a no contact rule, if you have not been chasing your ex, if they haven't seen from you, if they haven't heard from you, if they haven't got any real knowledge about you, that is when they're going to be starting to wonder more and more. Now, if you post things on social media and they see it, that isn't the same thing. I would say that can be a good thing as long as you're posting positive things about yourself, good photos. If you're posting information which seems ambitious and interesting, that can be intriguing. Remember what we said a little bit earlier. Social media is PR. You can use this just as they might be using this. So that can be helpful. What we're talking about in point number 2 is physical. Whether they physically see you or whether they physically hear your voice because you're leaving them voicemails, etc., etc. Those are the things which could decrease the chance of them thinking about you. Because why do they need to think about you when you are always in their life? You need to remove yourself from their orbit to give yourself the best chance of success of them missing you. Because if they don't miss you, they can't, they won't, and they will never want to get back together with you. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the build-up of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is point 1 plus point 2. So today we're speaking about what your ex is likely thinking after months apart. What's your ex-dumper going to be thinking post-breakup, months into the future? And this is where I would suggest is point number 1 plus point number 2. So what does this mean? Well, remember point number 1, which I described as they are feeling and thinking, this is different. Some days are good, some days are bad. And point number 2 was about you, the dumpee, to differing degrees. So your ex-dumper, when we're considering point number 3, it's point 1 plus point 2. And what does that equate? What does that equal? So they're thinking things are different, and they're also thinking of you to differing degrees. Now, depending on what these two elements come up with in their mind will dictate what they do moving forward. They're going to be thinking things are different, but are they predominantly thinking things are good, or are they predominantly thinking things are bad? Now, for you as a dumpee, you don't want to think of your ex-dumper enjoying their life on a new path. But the reality is we have to accept it can sometimes happen where they do find a path that they find more happiness than they did within your relationship. It's not likely to be anytime soon. Most of the time, that is not even going to be something they can discover until a year or more post-breakup. And today we're speaking about months rather than years. So it is unlikely to be the case in this period of time, but it is possible. And if they are enjoying their life on a new path, then unfortunately, whatever we add to that with point number 2, when they're thinking about you, they are unlikely to get to that stage of wanting to reach out. However, if they are feeling slightly confused about their life, if they are feeling there are ups, there are downs, but they're not really happy, it's not really gone the way they hoped, it's not exactly what they expected, they're still single, they can't find anybody new, life is different, and it's not really that great overall as the time ticks by, If we now add that to their thoughts of you in a positive sense, this is when reconnection is possible. Remember, point number 3 today is point 1, add point 2. Point 1 plus point 2. Point 2 being they're thinking of you, the dumpee, to differing degrees. Are you in their life all the time? Are you still chasing, texting, calling, knocking on their door? Are they not thinking of you because they're always seeing you anyway? If that's the case, then when we add point 1 and point 2, they're not going to want to reconnect. They're not going to miss you. So even when they're thinking their life is different and not all that great, if they aren't missing you, they're not going to want to reconnect with you. However, if when we consider that point number 2, when they're thinking of you, the dumpee, and they're thinking of you, they're wondering about you, they're missing you because you're not in their life anymore, you're not in their orbit. If we consider that and we plus and we add it to point number 1 where they think their life is different and not in that great a way, which is the most likely situation months post breakup, well then we have point number 1, add point number 2, and it equates point number 3, where they want to reconnect with you and they are very likely to reach out.